I'm 93 years old, and I have seen something far more painful than hatred, far more silent than anger, and far more permanent than a fight. I have seen children forget their parents while those parents were still alive, and I want you to listen carefully because this is not about dramatic abuse or screaming or cruelty. This is about something much quieter, much more ordinary, and much more dangerous. You think if you fail your children, they will hate you. You think if you make mistakes, they will resent you. You think if you work too much or miss a few birthdays or scroll through your phone at dinner, they will remember and argue and maybe one day confront you. But I have sat beside hospital beds where mothers stared at the ceiling waiting for a phone that never rang. I have held the hands of fathers who told me, "My son is just busy," while their eyes searched the door every time footsteps passed. And do you know what they said most often in those final weeks? They did not say, "My children hate me." They said, "They're busy, they have their own lives." And that sentence is the loneliest sentence I have ever heard, because hatred at least requires energy. Hatred means you still matter enough to be felt. But forgetting means you slowly became background noise in the story of their life. I once knew a man who built 3 businesses from nothing, who never missed a payment, who made sure his children went to the best schools, who told himself every late night at the office was an act of love, and when he was dying he said to me, "I gave them everything," and I asked him softly, "Did you give them yourself?" And he did not answer because the truth was too heavy. You see, children do not remember the mortgage being paid. They remember who sat on the floor with them. They do not remember the expensive vacations as clearly as they remember who looked into their eyes when they spoke. They do not remember the sacrifices you made silently. They remember the presents you did or did not give loudly. I have watched a daughter visit her father out of obligation, scrolling on her phone beside his bed, nodding without listening, and when she left, she said, "Call me if you need anything," and he whispered after she closed the door, "I don't want to need anything, I just want to matter," and that is the tragedy no one prepares you for. You can provide, protect, and perform the role of a parent for decades and still slowly fade into irrelevance if you were never emotionally present. Your children will not wake up one day and decide to erase you. It happens gradually, one missed conversation at a time, one distracted dinner at a time, one "not now" at a time, one football game you promised to attend but didn't, one moment where they came to you excited and you responded with exhaustion and you think they won't remember. But children are recording devices for attention. They measure love in minutes, not money, and when enough of those minutes are empty, something inside them adjusts. They stop coming to you first. They stop telling you everything. They start building a life where you are optional instead of essential. And here is the part that will hurt. They won't even be angry about it. They will adapt. They will find connection elsewhere. Friends, partners, screens, mentors. And by the time you realize the distance, it will feel awkward to close it because emotional habits harden over time. I have seen mothers say, "We used to be so close," and I gently ask, "When did you stop listening without correcting?" I have seen fathers say, "He doesn't talk to me anymore," and I ask, "When did you teach him that emotions were weakness?" And the room becomes very quiet. You do not lose your children in one catastrophic moment. You lose them in ordinary days, in the small dismissals that feel harmless, in the constant busyness that feels justified, in the belief that love is understood without being expressed. And the modern world has made this easier than ever because now distraction fits in your pocket. Now absence can exist while you are physically in the same room. I have watched families sit together in silence, each face glowing from a separate screen, and I thought to myself, this is how forgetting begins, not with conflict, but with quiet disconnection. And you may say, "I'm doing my best," and I believe you. Most parents are not evil. They are tired, they are stressed, they are overwhelmed. But love that is not felt consistently becomes a memory instead of a foundation. And when your child grows up and builds their adult life, they will prioritize the relationships that made them feel seen, not the ones that merely funded them. I once asked a dying woman what hurt the most, and she did not mention pain. She said, "I thought they would visit more." And when I asked why she thought that, she said, "Because I did everything for them." And there it was again, everything except presence. You must understand something that only time teaches clearly. Your children do not owe you closeness simply because you raised them. Closeness is not inherited, it is cultivated, and cultivation requires time, attention, humility, apology, laughter, softness, and repeated proof that they matter more than your ego, your schedule, and your phone. One day, if you are lucky, you will grow old, and the house will become quieter than you ever imagined, and you will scroll through photos of when they were small, and you will remember how their hand fit into yours, and you will wonder when exactly it slipped away. And I am telling you now, it does not slip away dramatically. It fades like ink left in the sun, and by the time you notice, the color is already pale. Your children will not hate you. Hatred keeps a bond alive. They will simply build a life that does not require you, and that is the deepest loneliness a parent can feel, not being rejected, but being unnecessary. And I am not telling you this to scare you. I am telling you this because I have heard too many last regrets whispered through oxygen masks, too many "I wish I had" spoken when there was no time left to repair anything, too many parents who thought love was obvious only to realize too late that love must be demonstrated daily. If your child is still young, you still have time. If your child is already distant, you still have a chance, but you must act before pride convinces you that the distance is their fault alone, because sometimes children do not forget out of cruelty. They forget out of conditioning. They learned how to relate to you from you, and before you defend yourself, ask gently, when they came to you with excitement, did you pause fully? When they failed, did you comfort before you corrected when they disagreed? Did you listen before you lectured when they cried? Did you sit without trying to fix them? Because those small responses accumulate into lifelong attachment. I have seen parents attend funerals of their own loneliness, standing in empty visiting hours, holding phones that remain silent, repeating, "They're busy," as if busyness explains emotional absence. And I want to save you from that sentence. I want you to understand that hatred can be healed, arguments can be resolved, but forgetting is a slow erosion that becomes normal, and normal is very hard to reverse once both sides adjust to it. And now I want to tell you something that may save you, something I learned too late by watching too many parents realize it when there was nothing left to fix, because the truth is, this distance is not permanent if you are brave enough to see it clearly. But most people are not brave. Most people protect their pride more fiercely than they protect their relationships. And pride is the quiet knife that cuts families apart. If your child has grown distant, the first instinct is to blame their generation, to blame social media, to blame their spouse, to blame work, to blame the world. And yes, the world is louder now, distractions are stronger, attention is fractured, but none of that removes your responsibility to reach across the silence with humility, because children rarely close the door completely. They leave it slightly open, waiting to see if you will knock gently, instead of pounding with authority. I once sat with a father who had not spoken to his daughter in 8 years over a small argument that grew into a mountain because neither one would apologize first. And as he struggled to breathe, he whispered, "Tell her I was proud of her." And I asked him, "Why didn't you tell her when you could?" And he said, I thought she knew, and that sentence broke something inside me because love assumed is love unspoken, and love unspoken eventually becomes love unfelt. If you want your children to remember you, to call you, to sit beside you willingly when you're old, you must do something that feels uncomfortable. You must choose connection over control. You must choose listening over lecturing. You must choose vulnerability over authority, because authority builds obedience, but vulnerability builds attachment, and attachment is what survives decades. Do you know what children remember most about their parents when they become adults? It is not discipline, it is not structure, it is not even the big sacrifices. It is how safe they felt bringing their imperfect selves to you. It is whether they could fail in front of you without feeling small. It is whether their opinions were heard even when you disagreed. It is whether your love felt conditional on performance or stable. Regardless of success, I have watched men who prided themselves on being strong crumble because their children did not feel emotionally safe around them, and strength without softness creates admiration at best, but distance at worst, and distance hardens into habit. You must understand that children grow up and naturally drift outward. That is healthy, that is life, but drifting outward should not mean disconnecting emotionally. And the only thing that anchors emotional connection over time is consistent warmth, not intensity, not dramatic gestures, but small, repeated moments of undivided attention. When your child speaks, put the phone down, not halfway, not face down on the table while notifications light the screen, but fully down. Look at them as if they are the only person in the room, because in that moment they are measuring their worth through your eyes. When they disagree with you, resist the urge to dominate. Instead say, tell me more, because curiosity builds bridges and certainty builds walls. When you make a mistake, and you will, apologize quickly and clearly, because nothing shocks a child more powerfully than a parent who can admit fault, and that shock becomes respect, and that respect becomes long-term closeness. And if you are already feeling distance, do not wait for a holiday or crisis. Send the message first, make the call first, visit first, not with accusation, but with openness, not with, why don't you call me? But with, I miss you, because accusation invites defense, but vulnerability invites warmth. I have seen relationships revive in the final months of life simply because one parent chose to say, I'm sorry if I wasn't always present, and the child, now grown, finally felt seen enough to return. Do not underestimate the power of that sentence, because children carry unspoken memories quietly. They do not always confront you. They adapt, and adaptation looks like independence, but independence without emotional connection turns into polite distance. And let me tell you what polite distance looks like in old age. It looks like scheduled visits instead of spontaneous ones. It looks like short phone calls instead of long conversations. It looks like duty instead of desire, and that is what you must guard against. Not hatred, not rebellion, but indifference, because indifference is quiet and socially acceptable and therefore very hard to challenge. If you want to be remembered warmly, become someone your children feel emotionally nourished around, not drained, not judged, not corrected constantly, but understood. That does not mean abandoning standards or boundaries. It means balancing them with affection, because affection is the memory glue of childhood, and without it, memories fade into neutral tones. I remember one mother who decided at 78 to change how she spoke to her son. She stopped criticizing his career choices. She stopped comparing him to others. She began asking about his day with genuine curiosity, and within a year their conversations grew longer, visits more frequent, and she told me with tears in her eyes, I thought it was too late, and I told her, it is only too late when you stop trying. And she died knowing her son would miss her, not out of obligation, but out of love. That is the difference I want for you. I do not want your children to visit you because they feel responsible. I want them to visit because they feel connected, and connection is built today, not in your final years. The modern world will try to convince you that providing is enough, that being physically present in the same house is enough, that liking their photos online is enough. But none of that replaces engaged presence. And engaged presence requires effort in a distracted age. It requires intentional pauses, intentional listening, intentional praise, intentional forgiveness. And if you are hearing this and thinking of your own parents instead, then the message is for you as well. Because one day roles reverse. One day you will be the one hoping the phone rings. One day you will be the one saying, "They're busy." And you will suddenly understand what I am saying with a clarity that hurts. Do not let busyness become the excuse that erases bonds slowly, because time does not negotiate. It moves forward whether you nurture connection or neglect it. Your children will not hate you for your imperfections. They will not hate you for being human. They will not even hate you for failing occasionally, but they may forget you if they never felt deeply known by you, and that forgetting will not happen overnight. It will happen quietly, politely, gradually, until one day you realize weeks have passed without real conversation, and months have passed without laughter, and years have passed without closeness. And reversing years requires far more courage than maintaining connection daily. I am 93, and I have watched enough endings to know that what people fear most is not death itself, but irrelevance, not pain, but being unnecessary. And the antidote to irrelevance is not money, not authority, not control. It is emotional presence, because presence is what creates memories, and memories are what keep you alive in the hearts of your children long after you are gone. So tonight, when you finish this video, do something small but intentional. Send a message that is not about logistics, but about love. Make a call that is not about information but about interest. Sit at the table without distraction. Listen longer than you speak. Apologize if needed. Hug without rushing, because these small acts compound over decades into a bond that cannot be easily forgotten. Your children will not hate you. Hatred burns and fades, but forgetting is cold and permanent, and I do not want that cold silence for you. I want warmth in your final years. I want laughter in hospital rooms instead of polite quiet. I want you to feel wanted, not accommodated, remembered, not tolerated, and that future begins now, not when you are old, not when you are sick, not when you are lonely, but today in the ordinary moments you are tempted to rush past, because ordinary moments are where lifelong attachment is built, and when you are 93 like me, you will not remember the meetings you attended or the emails you answered or the arguments you won. You will remember who sat close, who listened, who stayed, and you will hope, more than anything, that your children remember you the same way.